it's time to talk about Gaza.
The Middle East, big developments there in the last hour. Israel has carried out what it says are intense strikes on Hamas in response to what it claims are repeated violations of the Gaza ceasefire plan and what they say was a deliberate deception plot over the remains of a deceased hostage handed over yesterday. Hamas has now said it will postpone a planned handover of another deceased hostage body because of those Israeli strikes. Let's go back to our security correspondent Frank Gardner, who is in Jerusalem for us. And Frank, tell us a little more about why we've got to this stage, but also do we know any more about where these strikes have actually happened?
No, this has happened very recently, really in the last few minutes, Matthew. So there's been two lots of response from the Israelis. The first response was with artillery, and that was in response to what it says was Hamas firing on their troops east of the Yellow Line. Now, the Yellow Line is a kind of roughly north-south line that dividing the Gaza Strip into the 53% of it that is controlled by Israel and its military, and the remaining 47% where Hamas is still the prevailing military power. And Israel saying that its forces were fired on and this was a violation of the ceasefire deal by Hamas. And in addition to that, we're told that there were airstrikes that were launched, were ordered by Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu after intense consultations with the Americans in response to what it says was a deliberate deception plot by Hamas. Last night, Hamas was due to hand over another hostage, the remains of another hostage. Forensic tests, Israel says, proved that it was actually nothing, wasn't a new hostage. This was somebody who had already been recovered, their body been recovered 2 years ago. In addition to that, an IDF drone secretly filmed Hamas, and we've seen the footage. It does look pretty damning for Hamas. It does appear to show Hamas operatives taking the remains in a shroud out of a building, putting them into a shallow dug grave, covering it up with soil, and then handing it over to Red Cross International Committee, the Red Cross officials, which Israel said was a deception. Now, Hamas has not immediately commented on that. They have postponed the next handover that was due to take place this evening. They've also, very importantly, said, look, don't blame us for the delays in handing over these hostages, these dead hostages. Israel is obstructing the excavation work and making it very difficult for them to do it. Israel says, for its part, that they don't trust Hamas. They think it.
Yeah, no, it's definitely Hamas that's breaking the ceasefire. Hey, guys, it's definitely. By the way, remember when everyone was talking about how like Hamas is doing field executions, like this is unjustifiable. And then all of the human rights organizations that work in Gaza came out in unison and were like, hey, by the way, we realize that there is a lot less interceptions taking place at the point of aid distribution and delivery since Hamas has overtaken control over the parts of Gaza that Israel isn't currently occupying. Oh my God. How interesting how that works. It almost fucking feels like the Israel-backed militants in Gaza that are, drug dealers and ISIS affiliates and whatnot were directly contributing to the destabilization of the Strip by attacking aid delivery. Interesting how that works. Yeah, and remember when day one everyone was like, why aren't pro-Palestinians celebrating the ceasefire? Because the ceasefire never actually took complete hold. Yeah, Bibi had a court day today. I don't want to lean too much into the whole, like Benjamin Netanyahu is using the plight of Palestinians and like hitting the let's kill more Palestinians button over and over again in a way to avoid his own legal battles, because I feel like his own legal battles are somewhat inconsequential in the grand scheme of things. But the timing of it is always suspicious. I heard you were quitting. Where is this coming from? Who said I was quitting? Bro, if someone uses a clip of mine to say I am quitting and I'm live every fucking day, you have to stop listening to those people. Okay? You have to stop. Bro, I saw it trending on Twitter. Okay, you have to stop listening to whoever is saying this because they are very clearly lying. I know it's not one person. I know. That's why I came here, my guy. No, that's what I mean. It's not just about coming here and seeing for yourself, which I do respect. Okay, thank you for doing that. But it also means that you probably shouldn't trust those people any longer. Hassan is quitting keeps trending on TikTok too. Yeah, I don't get it. I guess at this point, it's just like, it doesn't fucking matter what I do. People just like have decided. People have decided, no, Hassan quit. He actually quit. No reason to go and check. No reason to go and check and see if that's the case or not. You know? Fuck it. Like, people just straight up live in an alternative reality at this point on the internet. And I think that's where we're at. That's just where we're at now. There's nothing you can do about it.
It's deliberately dragging this process out for as long as possible to toy with the emotions of the families. And other analysts in this region have said to me, well, actually, Hamas may well be kind of playing for time here because they worry that when the International Stabilization Force comes into Gaza and Hamas is obliged to hand over its weapons, it wants to be in as strong a position as possible so it doesn't basically get overrun by some of the armed clans that exist in Gaza. Highly complicated situation.
Frank, in terms of the American position, are you clear about that? Because since the ceasefire plan was signed up to, they have actually at different points said that and have acknowledged that actually it will be difficult in part for Hamas to retrieve the bodies because of the rubble and all the rest of it. So where are the Americans in where we've arrived at today?
Well, up until 24 hours ago, I would say that the bulk of the US pressure has been on Israel, primarily a restraining hand. If you remember, about 10 days ago, a couple of Sundays.
Once again, this framing is so crazy. Obviously, BBC is just like unlimited dick riding for Israel as always. But the framework is always so crazy because like they make it seem as though like Israel is an unstoppable force, like a hurricane or a volcano or something. And it's like, oh, well, there's a lot of restraint coming from the Trump side against Israel. And it's like, okay, well, doesn't that beg the question that Israel is the one who has been serially violating the fucking ceasefire? What are we talking about, man? What the hell?
Ago, there was a big outbreak of violence. Over 40 Palestinians were killed, 2 Israeli soldiers were killed, and the ceasefire was looking pretty rocky. The Americans came in, got on the phone, had their meetings with the Israelis and said, do not resume the war in Gaza. Now, the Israelis are saying to the Americans, look, we've been patient. You've asked us to be patient. We have been, but Hamas are playing games with us. What do you expect us to do? So I think we have to assume that this response, this armed response by Israel, and we haven't been told yet we don't yet know what the casualties are on the Hamas side or indeed on the Gazan civilian side if there have been any. But we have to assume that those airstrikes and artillery strikes would have been done in consultation with the Americans. But most importantly, the Americans do not want to see this ceasefire plan blown off course.
Yes.
They will have said to Israel, you can do just so much, but no further. Don't overdo it because we want to move on to phase 2 and get Gaza back up and running. And of course, the last thing Gazans want is a resumption of the war. They've had 2 years of it. They don't want any more.
exactly on that point, finally, Frank, because we have talked before and talked about perhaps the Lebanese model that exists, which is that there is a
I tapped out of the stream and got timed out. Are we just dropping the topic about you quitting? What is this? This is the clip? Bro, this has Hassan's last statement before quitting social media forever. What? I like that. I had completely forgotten I'd seen those TikToks until now because it was so easy to see through their bullshit. I don't know if people are falling for it. That's on them. It literally takes a pinch of media literacy to figure out the accounts are pushing this or disingenuous. Yeah. Move on. It has 5K likes. No one cares. I mean, seemingly a bunch of people have fucking come in here to be like, dude, what the fuck? Why are people saying you're quitting? I'm gonna be honest, dude. We are getting dumber and dumber. Like a lot of people think that they're actually smarter than mainstream media because like mainstream media narratives are like bullshit or whatever. But they are so fucking susceptible to like a random guy on the internet just talking shit to their phone camera. It's so funny. Yeah, I quit. Like if you're getting rape tone farmed, okay, if you're getting farmed by like a dickhead who is roundly despised by every single person for good fucking reasons, like you got to really reconsider. Especially because this is not even a cancellation at this point. This is just like, I hope he quits. Actually, he quit. Please don't look. Please don't look over there. Please don't look over there. He quit. Okay. Guys, do not tune into the Hasanabi broadcast. It's so funny that an entire generation of people who used to laugh at their parents getting duped by like email chains and stuff like that now have their children behave in the exact same way. It shows how desperately they want you to believe you're going away. Clearly the smear campaigns are not working. I know. All right, let's continue.
Ceasefire on paper, but sporadic major strikes from Israel, and the thought about whether that would be the template that the Israelis use. Because the worry here is that this ceasefire plan has the potential to unravel with what we've seen even in the last couple of hours.
There is that. So let's just kind of remind ourselves where we've got to. This is the tail end of phase one of the Trump 20-point peace plan. All 20 living Israeli hostages have been returned. That's a plus. Nobody can take that away. That is a major achievement, along with the release of over 1,700 Palestinian detainees that were taken from Gaza, plus around 200.
Yeah, major achievement that was the Hamas framework since like October 10, 2023, by the way. Like, again, virtually all the parts of the Gaza phase one ceasefire plan was already what Hamas had said yes to, with the only exception of Israel not like removing its military from the entirety of the Gaza Strip. The only thing that they had considered a red line that they had to say yes to in the first phase was that Israel would maintain troops in like 50% of the Gaza Strip. Okay? That's the only thing that they said yes to that they hadn't said yes to prior. And obviously the scary aspect of this was that Israel was going to consistently violate the ceasefire and continue bombing and continuous genocide after getting all of the Israeli hostages, the Israeli captives. And we're back. We're back at it.
150 convicted criminals.
They said yes to that? No. In the first phase, they agreed to removing all of their leverage. The only leverage the Palestinian Resistance Front has against Israel was the captives. And they said that their red line was a full withdrawal from the Strip. But it seems to me like there was a new calculation by the Palestinian resistance that the captives were no longer a point of leverage that they could use because Israel just didn't give a shit, and the rest of the world didn't give a shit either. And Israel would just seemingly consistently say, well, they have our hostages, so we can bomb all the Palestinians and keep putting pressure on the entire civilian population of Palestinians by continuing this genocide as a point of leverage. Just like aid distribution, which is a war crime, by the way, to the civilian population, a captive civilian population, was used as a point of leverage in the negotiation side for Israel. It's ridiculous.
In Israeli jails. That bit has happened. But what's the
It's not argumentative nor a trap. Calling them captives instead of hostages. Is that accurate and right? Were they not civilians? No, the last batch was the last 20, I think, were all Israeli occupational forces soldiers. And what's interesting is there was one person actually that was captured at Noah Argamani's boyfriend, who also, it later came out, was also I think like Israeli Secret Service or something. So every single remaining captive at that point were Israeli occupational force soldiers. As far as the Palestinian hostages goes, they are straightforward hostages. Like, for the most part, they're like doctors, regular civil society servants, things of that nature. I'm sure there's some militants that they have been able to capture in the process as well. But oftentimes they just kill the militants even before they actually apprehend them and prosecute them. There wasn't like 1,700 Palestinian militants that they captured and then released back into Gaza. They were all civilians. I'm not sure the wording matters, to be honest. Even if they're military, they served the purpose of a hostage. Is hostage carry a connotation we don't like or something? No, there's a difference between prisoners of war and hostages. That's why. There is like at least a legal gray area for prisoners of war versus hostages where there is no legal gray area. Under international law, obviously genocide is illegal, but nobody gives a shit. But considering the asymmetry that exists for the resistance, that was illegal. It was always illegal. Like, capturing civilians in the process of a military campaign is illegal. It's not. There's no question about it. Now, of course, when you look at the legality of the actions of a resistance group, you have to match that with what they are facing, right? The severity of the crisis. If you're looking at like 75 years of apartheid and occupation and sovereignty over this indigenous population, then of course the dynamic shifts a little bit. It's like looking at the Nat Turner Rebellion and then not matching that up against the severe death and destruction that black people faced under chattel slavery, and simply just looking at that in and of itself and going, wow, that was really fucked up. They slaughtered babies in their cribs, right? Like, what the fuck? That's crazy. They slaughtered white babies in their cribs. Like, yes, it was brutal. Yes, it was horrific. Having said that, the legalized practice of chattel slavery was so far and beyond more horrific than the singular act of violence that was born out of the Nat Turner Rebellion, that like it doesn't it doesn't even make a blip, right? That's the reason why you look at like ANC and the way that they dealt with collaborators as opposed to the legalized practice of apartheid, and you say, okay, well, there is a much, at least throughout history, people have overall, when they are atoning for what the resistance has done in the process of liberation, they oftentimes will be much more charitable to the resistance front and the actions, no matter how violent they are, because they understand that the violence that they were subjected to, that they were trying to end, is far more consequential and systematized.
Point now is ongoing sporadic violence between Hamas and Israel.
I know what a POW is. They didn't take them as POWs with the rules and regulations that POW status entails. I might be missing something, but I don't really understand why the term hostage is diminishing the Palestinian cause. Captive is also fine. Prisoner is fine, but why hostage bad, Jen? No, I'm explaining it to you. No, like kidnapped from a tank, okay? That's what I always think about. Like Nimrod Cohen was kidnapped from a tank, right? Now, no disrespect, because I think Nimrod Cohen's dad is like a pretty strong advocate for ending the occupation, but like the reality of the matter is you can't get kidnapped from a tank. You can't be a hostage if you were apprehended inside of a tank. Okay, you are literally a prisoner of war in that situation. Like that's, do you see what I mean? Like that's, words do matter in that regard. Like a non-combatant that is a IDF reservist or a non-combatant that is taken in the process of when they're what's the term, hors de combat or whatever, like when they're not, there's an international designation for this under international rules where a soldier that is not in the process of doing soldier duties are still not are still not considered like enemy combatants. My point is, it just doesn't fucking matter when it comes to Israel anyway, right? Like we are trying to make sense of all of it within the framework of international law, but let's be real. International law is not worth the paper that is written on when it comes to whatever the fuck Israel wants to do.
Inside Gaza Strip, and this yellow line that has got the two sides very close to each other, plus the fact that Hamas has yet to hand over the remaining remains of dead hostages. And there's deep suspicion on the Israeli side that Hamas's excuses are not genuine. They do not believe, the Israelis simply don't believe that Hamas is doing its best to find them and hand them over. They say they've got evidence that Hamas knows exactly where all the bodies are buried. It's simply toying with people's emotions. Hamas is saying, cut us some slack. Our, Gaza Strip is rubble. Much of it is reduced to, some of these bodies are buried under tons of rubble. It's going to take a while. We need excavation equipment, which the Egyptians have sent, and don't obstruct us. We need time to find them. So it depends which side you want to believe.
Frank Gardner, live for us there in Jerusalem. Thanks for bringing us right up to date. Thank you.
Before we get to the New York City mayoral race, like that's the latest updates from Israel, which is unfortunately the type of update that we're very familiar with, where one side ceases and Israel fires. This is exactly what happened in Lebanon as well. This is exactly what happens all over the place because Israel gets to operate within the confines of American protection. And that is the reason why it is more important than ever to basically stress the Trump administration and the American side to forcibly put the restraints on Israel because they're violating Trump's big, beautiful deal and potentially violating Trump's big, beautiful Gulf deals that might come along in the aftermath of this ceasefire.